This channel is supported by Truefire. Truefire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses. Basically, most of my kind of childhood and quite a lot of my playing career as well, sort of tone has been decoupled from volume in general. So I think this is partly the reason that things like blackface style Fender amps kind of came to me quite late compared to maybe some of you guys, or people that have been listening to people for longer. Some of my, like Eric Johnson for instance, like a guy who uses Fender clean amps, and loads of my sort of things that I'm into, Robin Ford as well, a guy who can use a Fender amp. I've never really felt like I knew really what a Fender amp was capable of until I had a load box, and this is going to be like a revelation to almost absolutely no one, but in case you're someone who's anything like me, maybe has had tube amps for a long time but not had a load box before. For me in this video, I'm just using a Fractal X Load, which is one of the options out there. I do work for G66 UK, and it's Suh's birthday today, but the cool thing for me about a load box is that basically the kid is asleep in the next room and the wife is in the bath there. I can do things that to me, involving a tube amp is kind of special for me, things that are a little bit different to usual, without having to shake the house down, destroy the neighbourhood. Also, I think a Deluxe Reverb on 7 would be too loud for this room by far. I'd need ear protection, I'd need some headphones, just things that aren't really possible in a normal sort of house without having, I think some of the things that like actual session players like JustinOstrander, I think he has an isolated room somewhere away from his actual studio which has the cabinet, and I think there's other folks that do that sort of thing as well. Leave their names in the comments if you want. For a lot of us that's not going to be possible, but sort of spending a bit of money on something like a Suhr Reactive Load, a Fractal X Load, could be a way that you can avoid a lot of like the modelling stuff if you're somewhat purist. You have to get around the idea that it has to be totally analog, but that's probably okay. We're not even talking about attenuation in this case, just about using this to be able to get some direct tones that are maybe inspiring. So this is The rig here is simply a ES335 into a Deluxe Reverb, and then out of that into the X Load, and then straight into Helix Native over there. I was just chatting to Andy Wood. I hope he doesn't mind me mentioning this. I'll probably edit this bit out if he does. He, even on his latest album Charisma, if you've not checked that out, was using his real amps into a Universal Audio aux box, and likewise I think he's told me that that's basically a really inspiring live rig for him to use, which is like the best sort of hybrid world for him, where he's using in-ears and an aux box to be able to get some of the amp vibe, but also direct tones that aren't going to get you fired from a gig. I think that's a cool one as well. There's lots of options out there. The one that looks the most different from anything else is the Fryette Power Station. Now that's got 2 chunky transformers in it and 2 tubes. So that one stands out to me as maybe being something significantly different. A lot of the others are somewhat similar as far as I can tell. You can look up some stuff online around this if you want to see what's actually in a load box. It's kind of interesting. And people have done their own sort of experimenting, making their own. You know, they all seem to do a job. Like a Suhr Reactive Load is perfectly decent, Fractal X Load is perfectly decent. The ones with the built-in IRs I don't necessarily find as useful as just being able to load it into my actual like Helix Native over there, because it's got the stuff that I'm familiar with. But of course you've got 2 notes and other stuff like that too. Just kicking on an EQ pedal here. I wish these things were around when I was, you know, first getting into some tube amps and stuff like that, because I experimented with like a lot of stuff, and maybe it would have saved some time. Maybe it would have enabled me to get some better recordings out of stuff, you know, rather than just getting a Kemper. At the time I had a Mesa Boogie Nomad that had a line out on it. I tried recording that from like 2006 to about 2015. You know, having always been in a bedroom sort of situation or home studio type situation, like never really being able to get these sorts of tones. Like if I had a load box, which have sort of now proliferated and there's loads of them about, I'd have had a much better idea about what these tube amps were capable of without having to go down the route of, you know, booking a huge studio or having thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds worth of gear in terms of like microphones, preamps, all that sort of stuff. And this kind of hybrid setup where it's like, okay, I'm accepting that I want to get rid of the volume type situation of a tube amp, but I want the preamp, the power amp, all of this good stuff. You know, a relatively inexpensive solution like the load box, I think is actually super useful for people like me and maybe people like you. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts. Are you a load box guy? What have you chosen to use? Do you dig them? There's a Nashville guy, Philcox Littlefield, who has some 2-notes gear that he talks about. He's got a truefire course where he mentions that, and yeah, I think he's got some 2-notes gear in his rack. So all of this stuff is actually getting used by people that are even playing on these records. So I think that's kind of an interesting thing as well. Let me know your favourite stuff. As I say, this is a Fractal X Load. Then I've got a Helix native preset that I call Loadbox Vibes. And then you can sort of experiment with mics in there and all that sort of stuff in the box, DAW, once you're done. Interesting way to do things, I think, and also you don't have to wake the baby up. It's all good. I hope you're having a good 2025 so far. Cheers for stopping by.